Let me ask you something that might make you a little uncomfortable. Have you ever felt her energy shift before you had a single piece of proof? Before any text, before any confession, before anything concrete you could point to? Have you ever just felt it? The good morning messages that used to come without you asking suddenly stopped. The laughter started sounding a little rehearsed. The warmth that used to be automatic became something you had to earn. And somewhere in the back of your mind, a quiet alarm started going off, telling you that something had changed, even though you couldn't explain exactly what. Most men in that situation do one of two things. They either ignore it and hope it goes away, or they go looking for proof and end up pushing her further away in the process. But high-value men who are emotionally intelligent and grounded, they don't wait for evidence before they pay attention. They read patterns, they notice shifts, and most importantly, they respond from a place of strength rather than fear. My name is Dr. Eva Danielle. I'm a relationship coach and intimacy expert. And on this channel, I talk honestly about attraction, male psychology, female behavior, and the dynamics that actually determine whether a relationship thrives or collapses. If you're serious about understanding women at a deeper level and becoming the kind of man who never has to wonder where he stands, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Today, I'm going to break down exactly how women behave when there's another man in the picture. Not rumors, not surface level stuff. We're going deep into the behavioral shifts, the psychological triggers behind them, and the 4 specific actions you need to take right now if you suspect there's real competition. Stay with me all the way through, because the last part is where most men completely miss the mark. The first thing that changes when another man enters the picture is never something you can take a screenshot of. It's not a dramatic confession. It's not a suspicious text. It's something far more subtle. And that's exactly why most men miss it until it's already too late. What changes first is attention. And attention always shifts before actions do. Her feelings begin to move before anything visible happens. And if you've developed enough emotional intelligence to notice, you'll feel that shift long before you can prove it. Here's what it actually looks like in real life. Her response pattern will change, not once, not on a stressful day, but consistently. She used to text you first thing in the morning without you saying a word. Now you're the one initiating every single conversation. She used to send voice notes, long messages, things that took effort. Now you get short replies, one-word answers, delayed responses that come hours later with no real explanation. And here's the thing about that. A woman who is genuinely excited about you does not repeatedly forget to reply. When someone matters to you deeply, you find time. Every time, without being asked. The quality of your conversations will drop alongside the quantity. Even when she does respond, something feels hollow. She stops asking follow-up questions. She stops showing curiosity about your day, your goals, your life. She doesn't build on what you're saying the way she used to. The energy goes flat. When a woman is deeply attracted to someone, she leans in. She wants to talk, she wants to know more. She looks for reasons to keep the conversation going. When her interest becomes divided, she gives less, emotionally, conversationally, energetically. Now, before you spiral, I need you to hear this clearly. This is not about panicking over one bad day. Everyone gets overwhelmed. Everyone has seasons of stress. You are not looking for a bad Tuesday. You are looking for a new pattern. If low effort becomes the norm instead of the exception, if reduced investment becomes her default setting with you, something has shifted internally, and that's what deserves your attention. Her availability will also become selective in a way that starts to feel unmistakably deliberate. She's too busy for you, but she's not too busy for everything else. Plans get pushed back. Calls get shorter. Time with you feels squeezed into whatever's left over after everything else has been accounted for. That is not random. That is a reordering of priorities. And people, without exception, always make time for what genuinely excites them. Ask yourself this. When you were truly excited about someone, did you struggle to find a minute to reply to them? Or were you looking for reasons to reach out? You already know the answer. She also stops putting in spontaneous effort. She no longer suggests plans or sends random photos from her day. The little things, the small, unprompted gestures that used to show up without her even thinking about them, quietly disappear. Those things were micro-investments. They were evidence of active emotional interest. When they vanish, her emotional energy is almost certainly being directed somewhere else. Attraction works like a spotlight. When someone new enters her world, that light can shift. Her mind begins comparing, often without her even being fully conscious of it. Who feels more exciting right now? Who feels more unpredictable? Who feels fresh and new? Novelty creates a neurological rush, and that rush is powerful, regardless of how real or deep the connection actually is. This does not automatically mean she's cheating. It means there is competition, and your response to that reality will determine everything that comes next. Instead of demanding reassurance, observe quietly. Instead of asking, "Are you talking to someone else?" ask yourself a harder question first. Have I become too predictable, too available, too comfortable? Because comfort and familiarity, as beautiful as they are in the right doses, can erode the tension that keeps attraction alive. When her attention shifts, your job is not to chase it back. Your job is to quietly strengthen yourself, sharpen your edge, become more compelling, not more anxious. You don't announce it. You don't perform it. You simply do it. That is how grounded, high-value men respond to competition. The second major behavioral shift involves privacy and what I call defensive energy. When another man enters her orbit, something happens in her psychology that she may not even be fully aware of. Her brain begins benchmarking. It begins comparing. And the way that shows up in her behavior is through a subtle but unmistakable shift in her standards and her energy toward you. Suddenly, things that were completely acceptable before are no longer acceptable. The same personality traits that used to make her laugh now feel predictable to her. The same routines that once felt stable now feel suffocating. And this has nothing to do with you objectively changing. It has everything to do with her brain experiencing the neurochemical novelty of someone new. Unfamiliar always feels intense, and intensity can distort perspective in powerful ways. If there's comparison energy present, you'll start noticing three things happening simultaneously. She'll begin critiquing you more. Small habits that you never commented on before suddenly become points of friction. Emotional distancing will begin, a subtle pulling back as she internally assesses her feelings. And conversations about the future will become vague or avoided altogether, where they used to feel natural and comfortable. Here is what comparison energy is actually exposing: stagnation. If you've been coasting, if you've been in maintenance mode instead of growth mode, this is the moment that becomes impossible to hide. But the answer is not to compete with him directly. The answer is to evolve in your own lane. The wrong question is, how do I be him? The right question is, have I been growing or have I been comfortable? Comfort is the enemy of attraction. If you become insecure and reactive during this phase, you lower your perceived value immediately. The presence of another man does not mean she prefers him. It means she is reassessing. And if you remain grounded, emotionally steady, and genuinely evolving as a man, that reassessment often resolves in your favor. But you have to be the kind of man worth reassessing in the first place. Ask yourself honestly, if she met you today in your current state, with your current habits, your current energy, your current trajectory, would she choose you without hesitation? Only you can answer that. And whatever that answer is, it's more important than anything he's doing. The third behavioral pattern is what I call independence talk, and it is one of the most misread signals in relationships. When there is another man in the picture, the language often shifts before the behavior fully changes. You'll start hearing phrases like, "I just need some space," or "I want to focus on myself right now," or "I'm trying to figure out what I actually want." Individually, none of these statements are necessarily alarming. People genuinely do need space. Growth does require some autonomy, but context determines meaning, always. When these phrases appear alongside decreased investment, emotional inconsistency, and comparison energy, they're not random. There is a restructuring happening. She is psychologically loosening the attachment. She is reducing her sense of accountability to you. She is creating emotional room for exploration without formally closing the door on the relationship. In many cases, it is a soft exit strategy being constructed before the actual exit is decided on. Here's the distinction that matters. If she genuinely needs space for personal growth, stress, or self-discovery, her tone will still feel anchored. She will still reassure you of stability even while asking for breathing room. She will not become vague about the future. She will not disappear emotionally. But when space is paired with emotional distancing, selective availability, and a sudden reluctance to talk about where things are heading, that is not personal growth. That is uncertainty about commitment. And uncertainty usually comes from options. When another man enters her world, it generates curiosity. And she cannot fully explore that curiosity while feeling fully tied to you. So she begins to widen the emotional gap. Independence talk is the bridge she builds to create that gap without having to say explicitly what she is doing. Watch for social repositioning alongside the language shift. She may start going out more without extending an invitation. She may begin emphasizing how much she enjoys doing things independently. She may start performing her independence more publicly on social media, in conversation, in the stories she tells about herself. None of this is inherently wrong on its own. But when independence suddenly becomes the central narrative of her identity within the context of your relationship, it almost always signals an emotional transition. And here is where most men completely destroy themselves. They hear, "I need space," and they respond from fear. They push for clarity immediately. They send long messages asking what's wrong. They show up anxious and desperate for reassurance. And all of that pressure simply validates her need for the space she asked for. It proves to her that she was right to create distance. High-value men respond completely differently. When she asks for space, you grant it, not passively, not resentfully, but calmly and confidently. You reduce your own availability. You stop chasing updates. You stop monitoring her activity, looking for clues. You expand your own life in the meantime. And here is the paradox that most men never discover. If her independence talk is genuine and about her own growth, your grounded and non-reactive response will actually strengthen her attraction to you. And if her independence talk is cover for exploring another option, your calm detachment will surface the truth far faster than any amount of pressure or interrogation ever would. Clinging delays clarity. Calmness accelerates truth. Remember that. There is one more layer here that deserves your attention. Independence talk very often coincides with a sudden spike in confidence, a new energy, a boldness that didn't exist before. If she is receiving significant attention from another man, that external validation creates a sense of empowerment. And that empowerment translates into phrases like, "I don't need anyone," or "I'm really good on my own." Confidence is deeply attractive, but when that confidence appears suddenly in the middle of a stable relationship without any obvious internal cause, it is worth asking what fueled it. Because more often than not, the answer is outside attention. So what do you actually do when you suspect another man is in the picture? This is where we move from analysis to action. And these 4 steps are what separate emotionally intelligent, high-value men from the ones who implode exactly when they need to be the most composed. The first thing you do is stop interrogating. Interrogation kills attraction every single time. The moment you start firing off questions, who is he? Why are you acting different? Are you talking to someone? You shift the emotional frame of the entire dynamic. You stop being the grounded, steady presence she needs to feel secure with, and you become the anxious man seeking reassurance. That shift is almost impossible to undo once it happens. Instead of interrogating, observe. Observation is calm. It is measured. It gathers real information over time rather than demanding false reassurance in the moment. You watch consistency. You listen to tone. You track patterns quietly without announcing that you're tracking them. When you observe instead of confronting prematurely, you maintain your composure. And composure is one of the most attractive qualities a man can possess during a moment of pressure. There is a powerful psychological principle at work here. People reveal far more when they do not feel cornered. When she feels pressured, she defends. When she feels free, she exposes herself through her behavior. Calmness creates the space for truth to surface on its own. The second action is to increase your value immediately. Do not sit with this. Do not wait. Expand your life right now. Improve your physical presence. Invest in your appearance, your health, your fitness. Sharpen your ambition. Pursue something that genuinely excites you. Diversify your social world. Increase your sense of purpose. When your life grows, your perceived value grows with it. And a man who is visibly moving forward is far more attractive than a man who is waiting for a woman to decide whether she wants him. The third action is to reduce emotional overavailability. If she senses that you are anxiously waiting for her, urgency vanishes. There's no draw toward someone who is always there, always waiting, always available at her convenience. When your presence feels steady, grounded, and genuinely full, not desperate, not performant, she recalibrates. The pull comes back. Not always, but far more often than most men realize. And the fourth action, the one that requires the most emotional strength, is to prepare for loss without panic. A woman who can easily redirect her attention elsewhere was never fully anchored to you in the first place. If another man can move you out of your position with relative ease, that is information. That is feedback about how deep and secure the foundation of that relationship actually was. And feedback is not failure. It is data. It shows you what needs to be built differently in yourself and in the next relationship you invest in. Because here is the truth that every man eventually has to face. Your value, your identity, your sense of self cannot be held in someone else's hands. The moment you outsource your worth to whether or not she chooses you, you've already lost, not her, but yourself. Grounded men build from the inside out. They remain compelling not because they perform for anyone's approval, but because they are genuinely and continuously becoming more of the man they want to be. That is the kind of man who doesn't have to wonder where he stands. That is the kind of man who never has to compete for attention, because his presence speaks for itself. I'm Dr. Eva Danielle, and if this video gave you a new way of seeing your situation, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 4 actions you're going to implement first. I read every single one. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because next week we're diving into something just as important: how to rebuild attraction with a woman who has emotionally pulled back, and whether it's worth doing at all. That's a conversation you do not want to miss.